So with that being said, let's bring them on stage as we speak. Bam! That was that was pretty smooth. Let me get comfortable. Good morning, good afternoon, and a good evening, some, I suppose. How's everyone doing?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great.
Good morning.
All right. Well,
Afternoon.
let's get this show on the road. So one after the other, I'll just ask you to introduce yourself and talk about what you do and where you're at. Cliff, we'll start with you, Mr. C. Rocker.
C. Rocker. Hi. Yeah. So greetings from Denver, Colorado, the Mile High City, home of the Broncos and the Nuggets. Go. So yeah, my name's Cliff. I work at SpeedCurve. I'm the chief product officer there. Work with a great team, small team, on an amazing product and really focused on making the web faster. We don't have enough time to go into my background with WebPerf because I'm one of the old dogs that started 20 plus years ago, almost as long as Philip was doing this. But I got into performance back in the Keynote days, Keynote systems. I was looking at, measuring different sites for Agilent Technologies, really liked the tech, really liked the space, jumped over into Keynote, started load testing and meta-guiding Paul Calvano, where we started breaking sites for fun and profit. And then switched over and got into front-end web performance. From there, went west because I was really interested in taking my career further with Walmart Labs and introducing RUM over there after seeing a lot of what was going on the West Coast with the exceptional performance team at Yahoo that Philip was a part of, and really wanting to look at how we could embrace RUM more effectively back, circa 2009, 2010. When Philip introduced Boomerang and things like that. So I've been on the RUM train ever since. So jumping from doing into the private sector into building products like working on Impulse over at Sosta, now Akamai, and then transitioning here over to SpeedCurve. So huge into RUM. I'm kind of a one-trick pony, but it's still exciting after all these years.
Philip, we'll hear from you.
All right. It seems like Cliff's already introduced me.
He's your agent, right?
He's such a big part of my story. I can't.
He's been acquiring me several times. I'm Philip Tellis. I'm currently the principal rum distiller at Akamai. And I guess I started out in performance in probably 20-ish years ago. Initially looking a lot at server-side performance, but I was at Yahoo at the time, and we were doing a lot of performance work internally. So I started working with the exceptional performance team there, and RUM was a big part of it. We realized that we had optimized the server side so much that there was nothing more we could get out of it. And so we started looking at the client side. And one of the issues then was that all these big companies, Yahoo, Google, Amazon, they had their own little performance teams, but the people outside of these companies had nothing. So that's kind of where I decided to open source Boomerang and throw it over to the world to see what people could do with RUM. It's just been a ride since then, one step following the other to where I am now. But yeah, again, we could talk about that. There's a lot to talk about there.
Absolutely, and as we were discussing, shortly before the stream, I was like, man, everyone's got their own story that could be like a separate show, or a separate stream. So we can get into that another time. All right. Last but not least, we go all the way out to Amsterdam. That's
not even that.
It's
even So my name is Karlijn Löwik, and I'm situated in Groningen. The Netherlands. So if you ever ask someone from the Netherlands, they will say that Groningen is about as far away as New York. Never ask someone to go to Groningen. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's also a lovely student city, with about 200,000 people who live there. Fun fact, pubs never close here, so we have a great life that I do not partake in, as I I'm the CEO of RUM Vision, which doesn't only serve cocktails with rum, but real user monitoring as well, same as what Cliff and Philip do. I'm a bit of the young kid on the block here because I've been around performance 8 years, but you might have seen me around only for 4, which is the moment that we founded RUM Vision. Yes, I've been passionate about talking about it for a while now, accessibility as well, and lovely to be here.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. And I appreciate the opportunity to have you on because, again, I think it provides a lot of context to what we're going to talk about. Now, I know everyone sort of like dipped in, sort of like how they got into it, but, I'll formally ask, and, and again, we'll go through the room right now, how you got into performance, what started the brush fire? And, Karlijn, I'm going to start with you.
Well, fun fact that many people I think know, but not all of them, is I'm married to Erwin Hofman, who has been a web performance consultant for many years now. And he sort of dragged me into it, but I went willing. But so I think we can credit Erwin for that one. We used to run, and we still do, by the way, websites. We built websites that were fast, and as I was already running that business, we came up with the idea of RUM and monitoring performance, as we still saw a huge gap, which is also why Philip made Boomerang and why Cliff still runs SpeedCurve, is in actually getting actionable insights to website owners on what is really happening with their users. So we can credit Erwin for this one, I think.
Okay, well, maybe I'll have to bring him on and talk about,
I can grab him right now.
Oh my God! All right, he's.
Oh, there he is.
Not even, the best part is he's probably watching the stream from his desk.
He probably is.
Amazing. All right, Philip. Again, we get an idea of your beginnings, but what would you credit as your one moment where you believe that, okay, I'm going to I'm going to work in web performance?
Yeah, it's hard to nail down any specific moment, but working at Yahoo, and especially with Steve Souders and Stoyan and Nicole Sullivan and a whole bunch of people who were very into performance, just looking at the impact they had on Yahoo's website. We had this thing called the wall of shame or the wall of fame, depending on how you sorted the results, and it was published in the cafeteria on the big screen. So as you're standing in line for lunch, you'd see that. So that basically came out of why slow. But those kind of little things helped me. I was working on products at Yahoo at the time, and they helped a lot with helping us improve our performance. And I thought, I want to do this. I want to help other people get their sites, or their little sites within Yahoo faster. And then at some point, I tried to petition Yahoo to open source it and to throw this open to the world. But that just... It wasn't what Yahoo did, so I said, all right, the next option is for me to leave and do it myself. So I quit Yahoo, and about the day I quit, in fact, Buddy Brewer called me and he said, hey, I'm thinking of starting this company. And I said, sure, let's do it together. So we started LogNormal in 2011. That was essentially a business built around Boomerang, which had been open sourced about a year and a half before that. And since then, we've tried to bring that thing out to other sites to help them see the correlation between business metrics and performance. How does performance affect conversions? How does it affect revenue? How does it affect people coming back to your site? And trying to really take that as far as possible. At the time, there was not much browser support, so I think that's kind of how this has all led into the community group. Really is trying to get browsers to listen to people who are working on RUM.
Right. It's interesting because so many of the things that you mentioned. So I remember just reading about Buddy Brewer. I haven't heard that name in quite some time now, and that's super interesting. Having flashbacks. All right, Mr. C. Rocker. Your turn. What was that moment that really got you into performance?
I think if I think about performance from a front end perspective, similar to Philip, when I was working at Keynote and focused on load and performance testing, it was all about the back end. You know, working with these huge brands, like trying to break their sites so they could handle Black Friday, and really kind of felt like we'd sort of hit the limit of that. And it wasn't. I don't want to say it wasn't fun. It was super fun to break huge websites like that. It was great to throw a bunch of load at them, but I didn't feel like it was really kind of. I thought there's this whole other piece that's missing. So a guy named Ben Rushlow at Keynote at the time, still over at Dynatrace, kind of a unsung hero of web performance, sort of became my mentor, brought me over, and we started doing front end web performance consulting, which just wasn't being done. So we kind of branched out, started really focusing on it, and we started seeing all these issues and all these commonalities that people had. Started tuning into what was happening elsewhere in the industry. With the meetup groups over in the West Coast that others feel like Philip were attending and presenting at, into the Velocity conferences where we were focusing a lot more on how do we take this group of people with a common interest and amplify that discussion. So I really started getting into it kind of over time. I would say where the spark really hit, where I really realized this is what I wanted to do and focus on, was when I discovered RUM, when I discovered the fact that, hey, synthetic's been great, but we're sort of dependent on ourselves to come up with, okay, what do we test? What should we look at? What are the key paths through our site and all this stuff? And it was just a really fixed way of thinking that RUM sort of blew out of the water. So I got really interested in it. Went over to Walmart, who was a customer of mine when I was at Keynote. They wanted me to come and run performance and reliability there, which included back-end performance testing as well as front-end. And that was conditional upon, hey, yeah, that's fine, but I really want to implement RUM. And none of the vendors were really moving forward with it at that time. So we looked at bringing on a consultant, Buddy Brewer, to come in and help us implement Boomerang, and paired up with the business to do a correlation study where we could see why web performance mattered, why front end mattered, to look at the impact on conversion rates at Walmart, which was just a game changer for me and just opened it up just in terms of, this is something where we can now directly tie performance to business outcomes and revenue. So on the shoulders of many like Philip and such, I feel like I just got that fever for RUM, and it's never really stopped.
And something else I'm going to mention, and this is for those watching as well. I've quietly been talking about trying to reinvigorate, resurface, re-energize, and rebuild the in-person performance experiences that we're having. You mentioned when you joined Walmart Labs, which I used to follow, by the way, because I remember finding out about it. I'm like, oh my God, Walmart's got a separate sort of like engineering arm on Twitter. I'm like, yes, follow. But I also remember you telling me that, because Cliff was also sort of like the author of this sort of like presentation where Walmart tied performance to commerce. And I'd heard about this. I read about it. And then one day when you're like, oh yeah, I put that out there. And you put that out there at a meetup, which to me just blew my mind. Like some of the most crucial, like one of the most crucial studies that has been sort of like talked about for so long was, originally discussed at a meetup. And I just thought that was phenomenal. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't imagine showing up at a meetup and getting those kind of nuggets and just like, not being like stunned. So that was pretty awesome. I just wanted to share that because it just brought back that memory.
Absolutely. Honestly, just really quick on that, I feel like that was a sort of ask for forgiveness moment at Walmart Labs, except for the fact that he's not there anymore, so I can say this. Jeremy King, who was the CIO at the time, who came over from eBay to start Walmart Labs, he on the side was like, yeah, man, just go for it. Like just talk about it. We need to be more open with what we're talking about. So it was great to be able to kind of, look at a place that always been more closed off to the world, and then opening it up and honestly giving back to that community, that WebPerf community and meetup group that had given so much to all of us. So it was a really great moment. I think that sort of spirit continues as we get into the community groups and working groups and everything else.
So, folks, we're here today to talk about, and it's been mentioned a couple of times now, the community group, and specifically the Web3C. Oh my God, Web
W3C, I think.
Yeah, W3C. Anyways, I'm just blanking right now.
Oh, trust me, it always trips me up.
Yeah, W3C community group, and let's talk about what it is, why it came about.
I'll let the co-chairs take that.
Yeah, I think we actually should mention, so Cliff and I are co-chairs, but Nick Jansma, he is actually, I think, the main reason why we might have been founded. I think he was the first one to reach out to the major RUMs and say, look, guys, it would be amazing if we could not just hate each other, but actually collaborate with each other and make a front where we can discuss things that we're running into, things we would like changed, or things we would like to be able to track. He couldn't join us today, which is too bad. So shout out if you're watching, Nick. I think it started with him. Unofficially, there were a couple of meetings which I actually didn't partake in. I sent my colleague Jordi, so I think that Cliff might be able to talk more about that. But that was sort of the beginning that we really figured we could actually make a front as a RUMs providers to see if we could move things along, cut together.
Yeah, I think you cover it well. I think this was the brainchild of Nick. Again, Nick is just an amazing person, but also just such a driving force behind web performance. Is one of the I guess co-chairs of the web performance working group as well. Nick approached me. We've been talking about doing something like this for years. However, this was a method for us to do that. The only reason it's called a community group is we can't call it a cabal, which is sort of what we were thinking of hey, we need to get everybody together, focus on getting all these vendors together for a common purpose to help push forward on whether it's browser issues or best practices or just really for more wide exposure to RUM.
Yeah.
So here's a quick question. You're saying you just mentioned browser issues. I'm just going to interject real quick. Are we seeing browser issues, say 20, 25 years later still?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I say that. I would say, I don't know, maybe Philip, you should maybe, or Karlijn, you guys can chime in a little bit more, but yeah, we are, but it's not, it's like everything, right? Software is hard and prioritization is harder. So what do you work on first? What gets done? So I think, yes, we're still seeing issues. We're having to support, two very large platforms when you're looking at Webkit and Chrome, and very different in terms of their approach to things. And Chrome's moving extremely fast and really driving a lot of the discussions around performance. But we still have to think about how do we continue to get Safari to catch up when that's for commerce, 60-70% of your traffic, right?
Let's
so I think that there's that. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I said, let's not forget Firefox.
I was going there next. I think but we can hit on that. Firefox has certainly stepped up. I think not as heavily resourced as Google, but still pushing ahead and doing some amazing things and introducing, Core Web Vitals into Firefox. And yeah, I'm a Firefox fan. I use Firefox.
Philip, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I'd say, we definitely still see issues, not just with features being implemented in one browser way before the others, or different features being implemented, but also things being implemented differently. And I think we as RUM providers are in the best position to tell when these things are incompatible. We see the data coming in from all these streams, right? And we see, hey, this doesn't look the same in Firefox and in Safari and Chrome and Internet or Edge. So we can present this data to the browsers and say, we have some evidence that you, Chrome, may not see the data from Edge, Firefox, and Safari may not see the data from Firefox, Chrome, and Edge, but we see all of it. We can point you to the differences. Yeah, another thing is like single page apps, right? Chrome has been moving forward with single page app support for like transitions and being able to measure that in RUM, but there still needs to be fallbacks for other browsers. It's something that we worked on way back in 2014 was to how do you measure SPAs with RUM? Like SPAs are not new. It's just being able to measure them has been new, and so there's been this whole blind spot that we really need to bring forward to browsers. So things like that, I think, come up. And then I have stories going back way back when there were also a whole bunch of different mobile operating systems. Now we only have to contend with two-ish. But way back in the day, I used to go to the AT&T store and open a test page on every single device that was on display, and run back home and then check the logs to see what was going on.
That's amazing. So tell me about the OSs, because at this point, maybe I've just been brainwashed, but I just don't remember that many more OSs than the few that we have available right now.
I mean, BlackBerry had its own operating system.
Oh,
Samsung had their
of course.
own. LG had their own. So, and even when, let's say, Samsung devices were using Android and the Android browser, it was Android browser with a different XPath parser. So you got everything works except this one little thing. And so, for example, Boomerang ships with its own XPath parser and its own MD5 generator and its own gzip processor and 6 different ways to send beacons because browsers are different.
Right.
I wish it didn't have to be that way. Boomerang would be much leaner and would load in a single TCP window if browsers were more similar in that sense.
True. Now, Cliff, you had mentioned something pretty important. You said that with the browsers and the challenges with them not sort of like operating the same way. But one key nugget you mentioned is that WebKit has how much of a share in this space?
I mean, it depends on which customers you're looking at, and obviously, I think there's heavier usage of iOS in the U.S. versus like what we see for our customers in Europe and just around. But I mean, it's huge. Like it's just such a huge part of commerce and how people interact with the web. Like so, for example, I'd say one of our really large retailers that we work with here in the U.S. 70% of their traffic is coming from iPhones. Like
wow.
Like and they're looking at Core Web Vitals, right? And they're saying, oh, okay, well, this is great. How come when I switch your filtering to iPhone, like there's no data, right? So there's a huge blind spot, right? And I think that it's hard to explain that to customers when we're in this Core Web Vitals centric world, which has been a great thing for moving performance forward. But how do you illustrate the fact that, hey, there's all this other stuff that's happening with your users that we're trying to get a beat on?
Now, we've sort of like established a bit of the picture that's taking place. Let's get back into the actually community group. What's a typical meeting at a community group sort of like session?
Karlijn, you wanna give a rundown?
Yeah. So we. Everyone who wants to is just interested in RUM can join. So it's a free for all. We'll share the link later. We meet up every Friday, every month, the second Friday of the month, except if our schedules don't align, and then we'll choose another one. But it tends to be the second Friday of the month. For me, it's always 4. I have no idea what time it is for you guys. And it tends to we tend to talk about what we're going to talk about through either the performance Slack or the meeting we had before. This is also, by the way, a great shout out to the performance Slack, which you could also do a whole SPDY episode about. That's beside the fact. So we tend to start with going over the agenda from last week. Then we go through our discussion point of the month, and this changes for many topics. So sometimes we hear about new browser updates. So we get an update from Chrome, or we get an update from Firefox. We've actually also talked, for instance, about the possibility of funding certain things that we could track, like metrics we are missing, and things that actually come up within our community. So it always talks about RUM and collecting data. The topics actually differ quite a lot. And there does tend to be something we jokingly call Barry's Bites when the performance team of Google with Barry gives us an update. But aside from that, we are quite free to talk about topics that we interest us. That is also the moment I'm going to give it to Cliff, because we do actually have a tracker where we keep subjects and we can vote on it. On what we would like to discuss the week after. And as it tends to happen is that we always have an awesome agenda, and then we chat so much that by the end of it, we move things to the month afterwards.
So Cliff, did you want to share? I know you had some screens.
Yeah,
ready.
Absolutely. So this is where you go. This is where you go if you want to learn more and get involved with the RUM community. We'll post the URL. Unfortunately, I can't seem to post in the chat, but W3C-CG/RUM if someone feels like posting that up there. But this is where you can go to learn more about the group, understand our mission, get links to our issue tracker, our repo. I'll go ahead and share this now, where we keep all of our meeting minutes and as well as projects that we're working on. So we want to track issues with browsers, things that we want to try to improve, try to kind of get together to fix. It could be something like documentation. It could be, hey, we want to have more best practices around instrumenting with server timing, or trying to enforce people to use more timing allow origin headers, whatever it might be, or browser specific issues. Basically gives us a place where we can track these issues, look at them over time, and submit new issues. And okay, hey, I just ran into this bug around LCP that I want to raise, and it's already open. But the more people that kind of contribute to this in the community group, the higher chance that it'll actually get worked on and fixed in the browser. So there's quite a bit of that we do and that we focus on also in the meetings as we step through that. The backlog of topics, it can range across a lot of different things. And one of the things that's been really nice for our members is their ability to kind of go in, look at the backlog of topics, upvote. So it's still very community driven. This isn't just, Karlijn, Nick saying, hey, this is what we should talk about. This is taking feedback from the group of like, what do they want to hear about? And it's great. So we've got an amazing backlog of things that we want to discuss and work on. And we're still, obviously open to new ideas and new things that people want to try to cover. But it's been fantastic so far. I will say we're seeing progress. Like, that's the thing, is like, we were hoping we'd be able to kind of get a catalyst here and kind of get more, get some people to attend every month. The meetings have been heavily attended, a lot of people contributing. It's not always the same voices. It's not as much of an echo chamber, to be honest, as I thought it might be. We've got people that have been doing this for years. We've got new kids on the block that are coming in and taking the RUM world by storm. It's a mix of folks that are really focused on getting stuff done. So it's been pretty amazing.
That's awesome. Now, you had mentioned that anyone can join the RUM community group, RUM CG, but I think they have to basically start an account over at the W3C, I guess, community and business groups, as they call it there.
Yep, they have to start an account, but you do not have to be a paid member of the W3C. So there's a big distinction there. That was a bit of a barrier to entry, I think, for some of the working groups versus the community groups. So yeah, all you need to do is set up an account within W3C, and then you can join. And you can join as an individual. You can join as part of a company. There's really no restrictions. It's very, very open, as this community has been for so many years.
Yeah. Now, you brought up a very important point, and I was actually going to ask this eventually. There's a difference between the RUM community group, or a community group, and a working group. Did you want to sort of, highlight what that is?
Yeah, I don't know, Philip, if you've got more background on this, or Karlijn, but yeah, you want to take it.
I guess the main difference is the sponsorship, right? With being part of the working group, it's you do have to pay for it, or you have to be an invited expert, and that's fairly low barrier to entry for companies that really want their vision put forward in the working group. But it's not open to everyone. It's not open to individual contributors. It's not open to small startups running their own RUM product. It's not open to companies that are necessarily doing their own, but don't focus on RUM as part of their business, right? So the community group allows far more people to contribute to it, to bring things up that those of us that are on the working group can then take forward to the working group. And having browsers in here also means we do have more, we do get it in front of browser authors sooner than if we had to wait for the whole process of going through the working group and getting it into an RFC or some other kind of recommendation there. I feel that was the main driving force behind starting it as a community group versus trying to get everybody into the working group.
Right. The other thing is we're not doing spec work in the community group, right? We're doing research, we're sharing best practices, we're providing input and recommendations to the working group so they know what to focus on and help prioritize. So we're trying to be more of an inlet to that group as well, to sort of drive prioritization in terms of what they're working on, where possible. So I like the model a lot because it's a little bit more open, a little bit more freeform, but also a little bit more, hey, let's just share what we're seeing. Let's create more, use cases that we can now push forward into the working groups to actually, look at how do we solve for these problems.
Got it. Now, do you have at current in the community group, do you have a representative or a staffer from every browser vendor right now?
You're really calling some people out today, man. I don't know.
I mean, I'm just curious because no. we talked about it being sort of like browser dependent at times, and then having a browser vendor on within the group might help move things forward. I don't know.
I kid. Yes, we do. We've got great representation, obviously from Chrome, which. I gotta love those guys. They're, and girls, I should say. They're amazing people, and they're just pushing things forward. But again, they can't cover up the rest of the gap that's there. Firefox has been very, very involved in intending. We've got people that are working on their own RUM projects that are in the private sector. You've got like IKEA and other people that are really focusing on how do we sort of build our own performance, for across our huge organization. How do we look at RUM in a different way? It's kind of got a different perspective. So there's, vendors like us. There's people who are building their own RUM products. There's browser vendors that are mostly all represented. I would say, yes, we'd love more participation and involvement from Webkit. I think we're seeing some inklings of that start to happen, especially this year, where they've mentioned they're going to start supporting at least 2 of the core web vitals. But yeah, it's great. It's awesome to have the ear of the people that are actually doing the work and getting the work done.
I didn't hear anything about Edgium. I'm sorry.
Edgium.
I just had to throw that one out there. It's bad me. Philip, I wanted to ask you this. As someone who definitely was at the forefront very early on RUM, are you seeing, do you at any point get flashbacks in very current conversations with things that you may have experienced or had to go through in the early days of, say, Boomerang?
Yeah, I think that's, you're definitely putting me on the spot here.
This is not 60 minutes, by the way.
It is. We had to go through a lot of things with Boomerang, and sometimes we broke sites by doing it. I think we're seeing less of that now. So some of the things we are seeing are with different ways of beaconing, right? We've got the send beacon, we've got fetch later. They're all coming up and they're maturing in different ways. And there are discussions. I think that's the biggest difference I see right now, is there are more discussions between the people who are using these different methods of measurement and sending data back with the browser vendors who are implementing them than there were back then. Back then, we'd see what was available and have to use it. So I think there's definitely some improvements there. With things like the Core Web Vitals that have really been published as the go-to metrics you should look at, I think there are some shortfallings there because they aren't well supported across browsers, right? So they aren't yet the go-to because of that reason. So there's still improvements that need to be made. There's still things that have to be worked on across browsers, and there still needs to be fallbacks by RUM providers like us to support these metrics on browsers that don't have native support.
Something that I think everyone would have a particular perspective on is the conversation of having clients and them understanding what RUM is. How tough must it have been like 10, 15 years ago? Like either of you can sort of pick that up.
I mean, I was going to say, Cliff, you worked more with people who are in the commerce space, so you might have a different perspective than I did. For me, it was a matter of really showing people how their business metrics correlated with performance metrics. So reaching out to people who we knew were already working in the performance space, companies like Etsy, who already had their own performance culture, and they were already using Boomerang internally. So I could go to them and say, hey, I can make some changes and show you how it correlates with business metrics, and then take it from there. And then we talk about that at Velocity or meetups and stuff, and then other people come up to us and we meet people and say, this is these are metrics that you can use. This is why RUM matters more than the synthetic tests you've been doing so far. There's also a lot of resources that are not under your control, and you really can't optimize them away. You need to work within those constraints. So that's where RUM comes and gives you a bigger picture.
Yeah, I would second that and just say that it was the discussion. It was always so nuanced, right? Like I think in the early days, there was sort of this RUM versus synthetic conversation that was happening. Like one was somehow better than the other, which I think we even way back then, while we were certainly trying to promote RUM, we were trying to explain the fact that, hey, this is like about both. There's very strong use cases for both, and that still holds true today. But I do find myself, well, not as often having that conversation, still having that conversation of why you need both versus one versus the other. And then also like what you get from RUM that you don't get from synthetic, vice versa. So those conversations at education, I think, is going to be a thing, while we're all doing this, while it kind of still continues to exist.
Right. And especially as e-commerce has become, or commerce in general, but might as well say e-commerce has become sort of like a de facto. It's like a standard. It's like, this is what the world is like right now, and this is why you have to pay attention. Karlijn, I feel like this is conversations that your team has almost like on a daily basis, so what has it been like on your end, sort of having these conversations?
Yeah,
as the CEO, because you cut the checks.
I cut the checks, yes. Well, I am happy to report that it is getting better, but it's still a huge issue that in e-commerce, I think about 80% of people are still aiming for 100% Lighthouse score and think if they fix that, then everything is done. And that's been a huge issue. I'm happy to report that I think all of us here and all of the people in the performance sphere are promoting looking beyond that, looking at your real users. And it's getting better. There are getting more people with RUM. We are selling more and more subscriptions, which is awesome. That's the goal, of course. That's where the checks come in. But it remains a challenge to convince people to look at real users. They are often not aware that they can even do that. And the nuances between that page speed score and Core Web Vitals, which are still delayed and still aggregated, and still only on the 75th percentile. And then RUM, that provides a whole picture, but not necessarily on all the browsers. It's just a lot for people to understand. And that's our job to explain. But once it's been explained, and people see the real data, that's why it's so important to keep sharing our experiences, and why we're so happy that other people aside from RUM vendors are in the RUM CG. It's really proving why you should have both and why detailed metrics are so important. And I think it's very much our job to make sure that the data is good, so we can translate it to them, which is what we do a lot, make it actionable to them, because they don't want to understand everything we talk about and every technical metric, but they absolutely care that their users have a good experience and their conversions go up, and all the other things why you would optimize for performance. So the conversations is that we have is that it's still a challenge, but it's over the last 4 years, I'm happy to report that it's absolutely getting better, and I keep hearing more and more after someone mentions a 100% page speed score, like, okay, but what about core web vitals? About your RUM? So we're moving ahead.
Absolutely. And thanks for bringing back up the to making sure that we're still on topic with the RUM CG. Speaking of RUM and the RUM CG, Philip, have you had the need or opportunity to sort of bring up maybe some data that might come from the RUM Archive, another project that you're involved in?
Yeah, I'd say the RUM Archive is intended to be a community project, so I won't say at the moment. Yes, Nick and I are the ones, and
sorry,
but it takes time and it takes effort to get this data in there. But essentially, we collect our RUM data, anonymize it, and publish it for other people to work with. It's available on BigQuery. I think the Insights page that you were on earlier, that had some data about like browser breakdown and performance trends over time. I think you were asking earlier about the breakdown between Chrome, between WebKit and non-WebKit. So that's something you can tell in here. Yeah, it's interesting. It's also tied to the baseline metric, so you can tell if you wanted to support 98% of your browsers, then what features do you need to support and things like that. But it's good, definitely good to get more data in there from more vendors covering more sites, properly anonymized, of course, so you cannot identify an individual website, nor can you identify an individual user by looking at that data. I think that's something where the community really can come together and provide a public good kind of.
And again, it's probably come in handy from time to time during CG meetings. I would gather.
Yeah, definitely. When looking at things we need to bring forward to browsers, we were looking at, for example, a little while ago, the use of the effective connection type and RTT values, and does that make sense to sort of standardize or expand? And really, that's where the data in the RUM Archive helps to determine. And we decided, in fact, not to get it into or rather pull it out of the RUM Archive, because it's not useful data, and it adds a level of dimensionality that does not tell you much. 99% of users are now beyond 4G or at 4G or higher, so you're actually able to identify individual users if you get somebody with a 2G or a lower connection, then that kind of becomes a problem. RTT values, again, were not that useful, so we can talk to browsers that way and say, hey, can we have better metrics, right? Better ways to identify network health, better ways to identify what kind of connection the user's on. Historically, Boomerang has had its own bandwidth test. This predates the effective connection type, where it would just saturate the network to figure out how fast the network was. And we don't want to do that, right? We don't want users to pay for the bits that we're using to measure them. Try to minimize the observer effect. And I think that's having good APIs to test this and actually give you useful metrics is important. Something that the RUM Archive and the community group can bring to browsers.
Excellent. So, so someone's going to say something. Sorry, I thought I heard something. So I would gather again, even like the API conversations, these are the type of topics you take on at the CG group. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. I just saw heads. And I was like, okay, I guess everyone agrees. So, in sort of like wrapping up slowly, what is, maybe off memory, what is one of the more, prescient topics right now over at the community group that you've been following sort of like, closely?
I think that there's one that's pretty obvious and kind of a softball here, which is the Core Web Vitals in Safari. And we back at when we were meeting initially and at WebPerf days, when I actually got to meet Karlijn for the first time in person, we were talking about like, hey, should we be looking at how we can fund work in the browsers through like a Gallia or something like that to actually build something into WebKit so we have Core Web Vitals. And then, Ryan Townsend and others were pushing for Core Web Vitals adoption at Interop this year. So to our delight, we saw Nicole Sullivan, who's working on engineering manager, I believe, over at Safari, focusing on rendering, came out and started asking the community, like, hey, is this something you want? Why do you want this? Can you give me some use cases? And they've committed to it, right? They've committed to LCP and INP in Safari. Now, I don't mean that I don't know if that means that it definitely gets done this year, but it sure as heck was a good sign and something that we're following very closely, and like a big task that was kind of moved off of our backlog of like, okay, this is now in progress, right? Now we can focus on other stuff. I'd say the other things that for me that are very topical, soft navigations and what's going on there within Chromium, and the Chrome team has been presenting that. And I think on Friday, going to talk about the availability of this in Origin trial. Huge, as Philip mentioned before, like for us to be able to get more visibility into SPAs. Other things like container timing that was introduced into Chromium, like how do we get that into WebKit? So there's no shortage of things that we want to tackle. Again, it comes down to sort of prioritization and what's next. Where we've also seen traction. Sorry, I've got so much stuff I'm excited about, but server timing. Server timing has been something that was adopted quite a while ago. And Akamai was kind of the first that were started exposing server timing headers where we could get more information from the backend onto the client. We've seen some jumps there. Like I got a Slack message from Tim over at Cloudflare after we talked about server timing and trying to get some best practices around standardization of, hey, this is what we just introduced at Cloudflare for all of our RUM vendors. Now we've got visibility into these server timing metrics like edge time and round trip time and cache hit ratio, stuff like that. So it's having traction. It is moving forward, and I'm delighted to see that in the participation. Because those folks are joining the working group and contributing and hearing what's important to everybody.
Yeah, so definitely. We mentioned browsers and RUM vendors earlier, but we should also mention there are CDN vendors also on the community group. So that definitely helps there as well.
Absolutely. And obviously they have like a great vision into what's happening from their end at the very least.
Karlijn and I and Nick were talking about it. We want to have a CDN day coming up where, and I think that'd be a great thing to have, like people that can speak from Fastly and Akamai and Cloudflare and other CDNs that want to participate to sort of have some of these discussions.
I like that idea. Ooh, okay. It's brilliant, a CDN day, because everyone's got their own little quirks and little features and things that they could talk about. So that sounds awesome. Karlijn, you're gonna add something?
I had this whole list and then Cliff told all.
Oh, sorry.
Cliff just yanked it. In summary, let's for everyone listening, they're really curious. They've enjoyed this conversation. What should they do to join the W3C RUM CG?
Follow the link that we're providing and sign up. It's really easy. You sign up, you get an email, we invite you to our. Hey, look how nice.
Yeah, I didn't want to block you guys. Sorry.
Yeah, well, mouth shut. No,
Yeah.
but just sign up. Our next meeting is actually Friday, the 8th. So for everyone who's watching live, join us. And if you're missing that one, we actually record them, so you can always watch them back if it's an topic that's interests you. And if you have any issues, just reach out to us, and we'll be happy to get you involved. It's a free for all. You don't need to be a RUM vendor. You don't even need to use RUM, although I would suggest that you do, as otherwise you'll have no idea what we're talking about. But for everyone who likes to geek out on performance, this is a really great community and really welcoming for everyone. Just join.
Awesome. In summary, whoops, that's gone. Perfect. Someone who's watching this, or the many who have been watching, they're again delighted. They might have questions, so they want to get in touch with either of you. How would they do that?
Actually, through the community group, there is a mailing list as well where you can reach out and ask questions. I'm obviously pretty approachable on the WebPerf Slack as well, as is Karlijn and Philip and Nick and everyone. That's kind of where we tend to gather and hang out a bit. So maybe, I don't know if we can kind of promote that or something, or post edit something in that talks about the web performance Slack. But I feel like that's a great place to start because we do have our own channel there where people can direct questions. But it's also not just, the three chairs talking. It's the entire group and the entire WebPerf community. So my number one recommendation would be that WebPerf Slack.
Yeah, I'd say most often the three chairs are not talking because one is definitely taking minutes.
Yes, true.
Oh, no, we have fireflies these days.
Oh, okay, there we go. Right. So the main location is going to be the performance Slack, which I'll share in the show notes. And individually, how would they reach out to you? If you take individual sort of like DMs or requests or whatever.
Yeah, the Slack group is good. I'm on Blue Sky, Blues Moon, and LinkedIn as well as Blues Moon, or Philip Tellis, I guess.
Slack and Blue Sky for me as well. And there's also like a great starter pack for web performance that I would highly recommend if you're new to Blue Sky, where so many people, that contribute great stuff are there. So that's maybe something to promote. I think Sia is the maintainer of that. So maybe as a follow-up, we can kind of give information on joining WebPerf Slack, but also that starter group within Blue Sky.
Perfect. That's true. I'll mention that.
Yeah. And LinkedIn also for me. I think I might be the most, aside from you, the most active on LinkedIn. But the other mediums work as well. Or just email, or they can drop by here in Groningen. The final thing where you might meet us, and for everyone who's interested in it, is that Performance Now in Amsterdam is coming up. Mm-hmm. And there are still tickets. And we are actually talking about doing a real life meetup of our group the day before Performance Now. So if for any reason you're still hesitating about going there, I think it's the biggest meetup of all the performance people in basically the world. And if you're still on the fence, go. It's amazing, and you should definitely do it.
I once again do want to thank everyone for joining. First of all, my three guests for taking time out of your morning, evening, and morning again, for giving us some insights on how the RUM CG works. And again, I'll share all that information, folks, in the show notes. That should be very clear. And no, because it's going to cover the page, so I won't do that. I was going to share the link. Do not go anywhere. I want to sort of like close up with you guys before I close this stream. So I'm going to take you off stage now. If that
I want to give a quick shout out to my son VMT, because he's going to be watching this when it comes out.
Yeah, buddy.
Oh my God. Okay, that's so cute. Amazing. All right.
I'm not going to bother because my kids aren't going to watch this. Sorry.
Oh no, mine neither. She just turned 4.
She's like, not again, please. So. Thank you very much for joining. We had a great audience here, so I do appreciate your time. I'm going to get back to some of the details that they'd mentioned. If you want to go through and check out the RUM CG, you can go to w3.org/community/RUM CG for information and that slide that you had seen. Getting back to what I talked about earlier, where we are here. There we go. If you want to go check out all these streams from the past and the one that was launched just today with Felix Arntz covering WordPress and performance. If you want to go to bit.ly or bit.ly/SPDY-streams, plural, you'll see all the videos there. Is there anything else that I want to mention? I don't believe so.